Does Wyndham High know what German Expressionism is? The German Expressionist film movement occurred post-World War I between 1920 and 1930. The movement is famous for its ultra-expressive mise-en-scene, particularly distorted sets, stark lighting and painted shadows, exaggerated performance, and themes reflecting psychological and societal paranoia. Expressionism is renowned for its highly stylized visual design, which often rejects realism in favor of subjective emotional representation. Distorted and exaggerated set designs, buildings, rooms and landscapes are often warped, angular or geometrically impossible, to reflect the inner turmoil or psychological states of the characters. Chiaroscuro lighting is used to create strong contrasts between light and shadow, which create a nightmarish, suspenseful atmosphere, emphasising fear, dread or moral ambiguity. Dutch angles and unusual camera perspectives, which are warped or skewed shots, which artificial landscapes and painted backdrops are used in the set to create deliberately unrealistic and exaggerated textures, shadows, and evoke mood rather than physical accuracy. In German Expressionism films often employ hyper-expressive theatrical performances to externalise inner emotions, fears and anxieties. The film that I'm studying as part of this movement is called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. In what appears to be a park, Francis sits on a bench with an older man who complains that spirits have driven him away from his family and home. When a dazed woman passes them, Francis explains that she is his fiancée Jane, and that they have suffered a great ordeal. Most of the rest of the film is a flashback of Francis' story, which takes place in Holstenwall, a shadowy town of twisted buildings and spiralling streets. Francis and his friend Alan, who are good-naturedly competing for Jane's affections, plan to visit the town fair. Meanwhile, a mysterious man named Dr. Caligari seeks a permit from the rude town clerk to present a spectacle at the fair, which features Cesar, a somnambulist. The clerk shouts at Caligari to wait, but ultimately approves the permit. That night, the clerk is stabbed to death in his bed. The next morning, Francis and Alan visit Caligari's sideshow attraction, where he opens a coffin-like box to reveal the sleeping Cesar. On Caligari's order, Cesar awakens and answers questions from the audience. Despite Francis' protests, Alan asks, how long shall I live? To Alan's horror, until dawn tomorrow. Later that night, a figure breaks into Alan's home and stabs him to death in his bed. A grief-stricken Francis investigates Alan's murder with help from Jane and her father, Dr. Olsen, who obtains police authorization to investigate the somnambulist. That night, the police apprehend a criminal in possession of a knife caught attempting to murder an elderly woman. When questioned by Francis and Dr. Olsen, the criminal confesses he tried to kill the elderly woman, but denies any part in the two previous deaths. He was merely taking advantage of the situation to divert blame away from himself. At night, Francis spies on Caligari and observes what happens to be Cesar sleeping in his box. However, the real Cesar sneaks into Jane's home as she sleeps. He raises a knife to stab her, but instead abducts her after a struggle, dragging her through the window into the street. Chased by an angry mob, Cesar eventually drops Jane and flees. He soon collapses and dies of exhaustion. Francis confirms that the criminal who confessed to the elderly woman's murder is still locked away and could not have been Jane's attacker. Francis and the police investigate Caligari's sideshow and discover that the Cesar sleeping in the box is only a dummy. Caligari escapes in the confusion. Francis follows him and sees Caligari go into an insane asylum. Upon further investigation, Francis is shocked to learn that Caligari is the asylum's director. With help from the asylum staff, Francis studies the director's records and diary while the director is sleeping. The writings reveal his obsession with the story of an 18th century mystic named Caligari, who used a somnambulist named Cesar to commit murders in northern Italian towns. The director, attempting to understand the earlier Caligari, experiments on a somnambulist admitted to the asylum, who becomes his Cesar. The asylum director screams, "I must become Caligari." After a flashback, Francis and the doctors call the police to Caligari's office, where they show him Cesar's corpse. Caligari then attacks one of the staff. He is subdued, restrained in a straitjacket, and becomes an inmate in his own asylum. The narrative returns to the present, where Francis concludes his story. In a twist ending, Francis is depicted as an asylum inmate. Jane and Cesar are patients as well. Jane believes that she is a queen, while Cesar is not a somnambulist but awake, quiet, and not visibly dangerous. The man Francis refers to as Dr. Caligari is the asylum director. Francis attacks him and is restrained in a straitjacket. then placed in the same cell where Caligari was confined in Franz's story. The asylum director announces that he now understands Franz's delusion and that he is confident he can cure him.